Hello everyone and welcome back to the Dicebreaker podcast. This episode is sponsored by Rogue Heroes Ruins of Tassos, the new game from Team 17 and Heliocentric Studios. It's launching on Steam and Nintendo Switch on the 23rd of Feb, and Rogue Heroes mixes a classic adventure game with procedurally generated dungeons and roguelike gameplay for up to 4 players through online and local multiplayer. You can choose from multiple player classes, team up with friends to fight procedural dungeons and explore an expansive overworld full of secrets. You can rebuild your town, upgrade your characters, take down the Titans, and save the once peaceful land of Tassos. You can buy Rogue Heroes before March the 9th, which is my birthday, and unlock the Bomber Pack through an early bird offer and feature the exclusive Bomber class weapon skins and home furniture that you can have for yourself. So go and have a little look. For a limited time, the Dicebreaker podcast listeners can get a 10% discount for Rogue Heroes on PC by visiting the Team 17 store. You can find that at store.team17.com and use the code DICE10, that's DICE10. Be a Rogue Hero today. Thanks very much.
Hello and welcome back to the Dicebreaker podcast. Welcome back, me. I've been off. I'm back. But also...
Wow, the audacity of Matt
Welcome
Jarvis.
back.
Matt, welcome back from your best friend, Matt.
Hey, look, no one else was going to say it. I got to be here for me. I got to be here for number one, Matt Jarvis.
I wasn't on last week either. You don't see me whooping.
Welcome back, Wills. Wills, it's also great to have you back.
Yeah,
I'm here.
Yeah, Meehan's part of the furniture at this point.
I'm hanging around like a bad smell.
Of course, welcome back, Alex Meehan.
Yeah.
Joining us as always for this, episode 47. We don't have an Alex slowly, so I'm going to assume that it's some kind of play on heaven.
We're in
that's
heaven.
47.
The bingo call is 4 and 7. Literally,
Oh,
it's 4 and 7. Those
Look,
are the words that come out of the
Big bingo. You had an open goal here.
This podcast is just a front for Big Bingo to sell more balls.
Look, Mr. Bingo.
If that even is your real name. We are here, of course, to talk about this week's bevy of board game news and tabletop RPG chat and what we've been playing, which we'll dive into right away. Wills, as of course you weren't on last week, which I know. Wills, what have you been playing recently?
I played recently Dinn again, which I've talked about on the podcast before. I played it with my partner. My partner, we have found out, doesn't like playing competitive games because they feel bad. They're always like, I don't like playing against you because it feels like we're fighting. I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Is
We'll
it
play
because
co-op from next.
Is it because you're smug when you win?
Yeah, probably. But
Yeah.
I mean, so for anyone who missed the last time I talked about it, Dinn is like a trading card game. It is super, super simple. Like, you can learn the rules in like 5 minutes. And it's kind of based on like poker. So it has like this sort of like revealing a run kind of feel to it. You basically, every single round, everyone plays, like, or both of you rather, play 3 cards each. You start with a hero, and then you either put down an equipment card or an action card for the next 2. And then essentially who has the most power at the end wins. But every card, of course, because it's a TCG, has different text on it that says, I break the rules in this way, I break the rules in this way. I don't know why they talk to you, but that's apparently how it works.
Oh, is that how you like read it in your head? Like
Can
the
you
character's
imagine-
talking to you?
Can you imagine if you're like, I've got the secret card, and then the card's like, yes, I'm the one that destroys all of their things. And you're like,
Hail!
shut up, card.
There's probably been something like that though.
Yeah,
Like
there must be some kind of. I mean, look, trading card games are pretty popular on PC right now, and other platforms in which you play video games. So there's probably like a card that talks somewhere.
I mean,
Hearthstone's
they do that in
probably
like
done it,
Hearthstone, right? Yeah, they're all
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm an orc. Oh,
They're all like
I'm a
that.
cold orc. Play me.
Oh,
Matt
I'm a human.
Jarvis.
Oh, I'm a rogue.
Did you do the voice acting for that game? 'Cause-
Oh, yeah, I did actually.
Yeah.
Disclaimer, I was all of the voices in Hearthstone.
Well, the writing for Hearthstone's really easy because every single line is just, ooh, I'm a, and then whatever the name of the card is.
Oh gosh.
But yeah, apart from that, I've just been playing a lot of Valheim, to be honest. So apart from that, I'm
Wheels?
just cracking on.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, I don't know what this is. This Valheim.
What's a
is.
video game?
I mean, I
Don't
didn't
even
say it
know.
was a video game, Matt. So.
All right. Well, Alex Meehan, let's shift over to you. What have you been playing this week? Looking around for
Me?
something.
Oh, I'm Alex Meehan.
Oh yeah.
That's what I'd say if I was a Hearthstone card. I've been playing. Let's think. Now I've forgotten what I've been... Oh, okay. So we played a game together, didn't we, Matt Jarvis?
We did. It wasn't Root.
No, it wasn't
Shock.
Root. I know.
Surprise.
Sorry.
It wasn't, and it wasn't Scythe.
Oh my goodness.
I know. We're
Everybody
really pushing the
just
boat
calm
out
down,
here.
please.
A third game has been introduced into our rotation. It's only taken like 8 months.
We've really pulled the
there.
rug out from under you. Sorry. Apologies. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That I'm Alex Meehan really took it out of you, didn't it?
Yeah, it's really done it for me. Yeah, Matt and I played Terraforming Mars. The digital app version, to be
The
specific.
ugliest game ever made.
One of the ugliest games.
One of the ugliest
Yeah.
games ever made.
It's the PC app isn't too bad. The planet isn't so bad. Like that's got kind of a nice, slightly 3D. It slightly moves as you move, and then the cards come up, and it's stock imagery of someone's poodle.
Yeah. There's a pets card in that game, and it's just a poodle. And it makes it the best and worst card in the entire game. But yeah, we played the digital app version. I know, a video game. Shocking. And it's quite good, actually. It's got an interesting soundtrack that I had to turn down because it was very loud. And the sound effects are very kind of over the top. But then, yeah, they're paired with these cards with just stock imagery, and you're like, this doesn't quite work. But for those who might not know, Terraforming Mars, I'm really, even though it's my job, sometimes I really struggle trying to explain, like, a genre of board game. But I guess the closest, this is like an engine builder.
Yeah, I was about to
isn't
say
it?
it's an
Isn't
engine
it,
builder,
Matt?
right? Yes.
It's a mixture
Yeah.
of things. It's
You're not necessarily gaining more actions, but like your resources build up each turn, or at least they do if you're every other player but me.
Oh, come on, Matt. You weren't that bad. Don't
You
do
were.
this now.
Every podcast,
Oh, no, I was-
when Matt has played a game with me, and he's either destitute or he's like, I am the king of everything.
Look, I have 2 moods.
Yeah, there's
It's
two.
like
there
you
are
are
two.
literally-
Either
You're literally
wildly
that Bart
arrogant
Simpson
or
meme where it's like, I'm the best, or...
There are two
Yeah.
wolves inside of you. One of them's very smug.
one is
The other one
crying.
is
One
crying.
has beaten Alex Meehan at a board game, the other has lost to Alex Meehan at a board game.
I mean, technically, he didn't really lose to me because I didn't win, but I did get a better score than you. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Whichever way you look at it, Matt's still the loser.
yeah,
I think
potato, potato.
that's the takeaway.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a mixture of things. It's like I know it's a forbidden word, but it is a strategy game of sorts. I know, shocking. Where it's kind of the best way to describe it in the sense it's a mixture of things. Like there's engine building, there's resource management, there's card drafting in a sense that you choose cards each turn. So you're all corporations who are trying to inhabit Mars. So basically the near future. And you're trying to terraform it to make it livable for human beings. And by doing that, you need to improve the oxygen levels and place oceans and raise the temperature. And it's kind of a goal that you're all working towards together.
And then you get to raise the roof.
Yeah, raise the roof. Because once those parameters are met, then the game ends. But along the way, you're looking to kind of score victory points, and you're looking to acquire what are called awards and milestones, which also give you victory points, so that by the time it reaches the end of the game, you're the person with the most points. So it's very much one of those games where you're having to keep tabs and all different things, and you're having to kind of work out ahead, okay, I need to make sure that I'm going to be in this position by the end of the game. So, sometimes you'll be wanting to improve the terraforming kind of rating So each corporation had their own terraforming rating, which affects kind of the money you get and also your score at the end. But there are loads of like little bits working towards it, and at first it's quite overwhelming because you're having to take on all these rules and concepts. But when you actually get into playing it, it makes a lot of sense in the sense that really it's just you're choosing cards, you're playing those cards, and some of those cards combo off one another, and then you get resources at the end of what's called a generation, which is when all players have passed, and then you get your resources. So you can improve the amount of resources you get each generation by playing cards. You can also use those resources to do things on the planet. So you'll be placing like greenery tiles and ocean tiles and cities and things like that. And it gets to a very satisfying point where like the actions that you do and the actions that other people do like feed off of one another, so that if someone, for example, places a city, a few people might get some money from that every time that happens, or they'll open up an action that allows them to get resources, and then they can use those resources to do another thing. So it's just a very satisfying sense of you start with nothing really, and then by the end you're like rolling in resources, and you've got loads of actions available to you and things like that. So I kind of felt like I knew what I was doing, but I think it's one of those games where you have to kind of play it multiple times to really understand what's going on. Like really, like we were playing with two people, our regular group of board gamers who are like, compared to Matt and I, were like experts. So we were kind of like, what does this do?
Sounds like that's usually the case from the stories that you tell of you two play board games.
I don't know, like I'd say Matt and I were more familiar with Root than they were. Like whereas I think they've played a lot of Terraforming Mars, whereas like this was my first time. Was it your first time, Matt? I can't remember.
I had played it very briefly, but years ago. Like I'd never really sat down and played it properly. So I was basically a complete newcomer.
Newbie, yeah. Although you didn't choose the beginner company for some reason.
No, I chose the one that had a lot of money. I was like, yeah, I'll be the capitalists. That surely will win out in the end. And
what I quite like about the theme of Terraforming Mars is just that like I feel like there's a lot of these kind of Euro games where you're not necessarily like interacting with each other, you're just competing. And so many of them are themed around like, hey, you're all collaboratively working on this thing, but whoever does it best gets like the win at the end, where it's like, yeah, but we're like all building this palace, right? I don't understand why we're competing. Whereas when you're like big corporations trying to screw each other over on the brand new bit of land in space, you know, it kind of makes more sense.
It was those bits that I found kind of most interesting. So like greeneries, which they're literally just green spaces. You can play those down, and they will give you points if you have a city next to them, but you can also gain off other people's greeneries. So it doesn't actually matter if the greeneries are yours or not, as long as they're next to your city, and vice versa with your opponents. So you could put down greeneries, but if they plonk a city down next to them all, they're going to get those points.
Yeah.
So at one point, I think I had the most cities out of everyone. I had like 6 or 7 cities. And in the closing rounds, like, Meehan was putting down greeneries because there were only so many spaces left. And it was a case of like, oh, thank you very much for those, like, for that terraforming rating. Like,
yeah,
thanks very much.
The thing is, I was placing those greeneries against my city as well, because we kind of bordered a little bit. And so it's like, well, I'm benefiting myself, but I'm also benefiting Matt. But placing greeneries also improves the oxygen levels. So, like, there are multiple benefits from doing certain actions. And, like, you know, they also have cards where you can play things that add things onto those cards that give you victory points. So there's like a lot going on in Terraforming Mars. But I think there were plenty of opportunities for you to kind of pick and choose, like, oh, I think this is probably going to be one of the best ways for me to get victory points. It's one of those games where it's like, if you put too much, like, if you put your fingers in too many pies, it's probably not going to work out. It's better for you to have a few really big pies that then you can get victory points from. Does that make
You
sense?
just want one big Mars pie.
You want one big Mars
not a
pie.
lot of smaller Mars pies.
Mars bar pie. That'd
Oh god, that sounds.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Mars bar ice cream, fantastic.
Yeah, Mars bar ice cream is a good one.
Deep fried Mars bars are also a thing that people eat, apparently.
Wills, when you said, "Oh, I don't know," you look like that gif of the woman from you know the one from is it Our Country?
Oh, I thought you meant the kombucha lady, where she's like, ugh.
I swear that's her, right? I can't remember. Anyway.
I don't know. I thought she was just an internet
kombucha lady.
person.
Yeah. This is meandering.
What on this podcast? How dare you?
Yeah, I'd say there's not as many opportunities for player interaction as there are in a game like Root, for example. But Root is all about the player interaction, whereas here there are moments where you can like steal people's resources or, like Matt said, place greeneries like next to people's cities and things like that. But it's more of a balance. It's like a mixture of I'm in my corner doing my thing, but sometimes I'll reach over and like grab something of yours or along those. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like one of the cards is you summon an asteroid to hit someone, but it feels
Jesus.
like it's quite expensive and it does quite a lot, but it's not like it wipes a city off the board. You don't really take tiles off the board. So it feels strangely like passive. Yeah, you just kind of steal some resources. And it's like, oh, okay, so an asteroid comes slamming down, but you lost a few plants or something. It feels kind of a little drier in that respect, but yeah, I still really enjoyed it. I think it was interesting watching the score tick up at the end because, like I say, I'd put down a lot of cities, so I scored a lot of points for cities. And I think most of us were ahead of you, Alex, until kind of like the victory, because you've got your terraforming rating, which you get from doing certain actions like raising oxygen, raising temperature, and so on.
Yeah.
But then you've got straight up victory points, which add only at the end, or they kind of tot up.
Yeah, it's
exciting.
So
at some point, Meehan had like 21 victory points, and I had 1. So you suddenly shot past like several of us, I think.
Yeah, I was sat there going, "Oh, this doesn't look good," and then suddenly it was like, "Oh, victory points!" Whoop! I was like, "That's where the money went." It was really good. I would like to play that again. Like, there's a lot of hype behind that game, and like as someone who hadn't played it yet, you're always like, "Oh, does it live up to it, or is it just something that the board game community agrees upon because it's the opinion you have?" But no, it is a good game. Like, I'd say the theme is a bit drier than I'd like it to be. Like, it is, you're going to Mars and that's cool, but the game kind of treats it a little bit like, oh, you're placing your greeneries now. Oh, look, there's a rover, I guess. It doesn't have like a huge amount of enthusiasm for that, but I don't think it's a huge detriment. It's just I'm a sucker for a really strong theme, but not every game needs to have that. So it was good. I've also played a game called Chroma this week. I believe I'm allowed to talk about this.
Yeah, I don't think there's any embargo.
It's from Breaking Games, who have done, Matt, help me out here.
Breaking Games, I think they also
Desperately
act as
typing.
like a... Well, I think they act as like a distributor for other games, so I sometimes get a little bit confused. Dwellings of Everdale, never heard of that. Game of Phones, I think that's kind of the fare they've done. I kind of associate them with like small party-ish games.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they do more than that.
Yeah, they do a lot. Yeah, like Matt said, they do a lot of party games. But this is a new game that they'll be releasing this year.
Yeah, I think it's kickstarting in the summer and released towards the end, although those dates might be subject to change.
Don't hold us on that. But I received a preview copy of this game called Chroma, which is interesting. It's an abstract game where you have this kind of triangle board, which has like symbols etched onto it, and then there's a LED light that kind of backlights it, and you use these plastic pieces and you place them on the game board, and and they're different colours, and so the light shines through those pieces, and it kind of generates different colours depending on how you layer each piece. So there are like blue, yellow, and magenta coloured pieces. So then when you layer like the yellow and the blue on top of each other, you get a green. So like each person has their select colour they need to get, and it's secret from the other players. So it's a 2 or 3 player game. I've been playing it 2 player mostly, and it's interesting. It's like you have to kind of think ahead a little bit in terms of whenever you draw a piece from the bag, you can't see what colour it is. It has to be, random, but you can see what kind of shape and size the piece is using your hands. So you kind of have to visualize in your head what you think the piece looks like, and then hope that you've picked one that fits in with your strategy. But obviously sometimes the color is completely useless to you. But you can use those colors to kind of mess up your opponent's strategy as well. So it's an interesting concept, and the game is fun to play. Like, you get into it. Like, I was having a dig at my opponent when I kept drawing magentas, constantly drawing magentas. And I was like, this is useless to me. But
it's a fantastic colour. I mean,
arguably. But like, it still doesn't feel like you're wasting your time, because you can still use those to kind of like deliberately mess with your opponent's plans. So it is interesting. There is a layer of kind of strategy with that. I will say sometimes it depends on how your brain works, in terms of some people's brains work better in terms of visualizing images in their head, whereas I'm not so good at that. I find it hard sometimes to like feel something and be like, oh, that's what it looks like in my brain. Like when someone describes something to you and you have to try and visualize it in your head. Like, apparently some people are better at that than others, but it doesn't mean that I'm completely, hopeless at it. It's just, it's an interesting concept. I will say the light is quite bright. So if you're very sensitive to light, then it might not be the best thing. Again, I'm playing a preview copy, so I don't know what the final version is going to be like. But yeah, it's not just the gimmick. There is fun in the gameplay, but it's not, it hasn't wowed me. It's just, this is fun. That's the general feeling of it. This is fun, and it looks kind of cool at the end. Cool. There you go.
All right.
Chroma.
And we kind of discussed it before, but there's no, like, it's very color dependent, right? So if folks are colorblind or unable to distinguish different colors apart, it doesn't seem like there's any way of playing it as like a straight.
Yeah, there's not
tile placement game.
There's no writing on the pieces or symbols or anything like that. It is entirely dependent on color. So if you are colorblind as well, then yeah, unfortunately, probably not gonna get much enjoyment out of this game. Yeah. So it does have a lot of, it's fun, but to it. I will be doing a preview of it, so keep your eyes out if you want to read more.
It looks pretty.
It
does look pretty.
It's an interesting concept. Like, the board feels like proper solid. You can charge up the LED like with your, like, a device, like a laptop or desktop or something. It comes with a cute bag that keeps all your pieces in, and the rule book as well. Like, it fits nicely in there. It seems like the kind of game that might also be good for younger players. Because of the fact that you have to visualize the pieces, and the fact that the rules aren't very complicated, but it's still you still have to think about what you're doing, and it's also eye-catching. So yeah, again, I imagine younger players would enjoy that. So I can even imagine if you complete your game, you could keep it as like a decoration, because it looks pretty when the light shines through the colors. So yeah,
nice.
Cool.
All right. Other than Terraforming Mars, which we discussed at length, I finally played Mausritter. last week, which is I discussed it a few podcasts ago now. It's the Mouse RPG by Isaac Williams, I believe the designer illustrator is. It's like a small indie fantasy RPG in which the players play mice. They venture out into a big world. It's pretty classic setup. It's very Redwall-esque or whatever you want to make of it. And on the whole, it's a very light RPG. So the rules are about as light as the premise, in that you roll a d20. You have 3 stats, which are strength, dex, and will. So that's it. And you're looking to roll under them. So it's like a roll under system. So and you can get advantage and disadvantage, in which case you just roll 2 d20s and you take the higher or lower. And that's kind of it. It has a really nice inventory system where your character sheet has kind of 4 slots for your main paw, your off paw, and your body, which is 2 slots. And then you have 6 squares. And the items, because I actually have the physical set, which I bought from, I think, just the Mausritter website, or I can't remember what the publisher's called now. But they are just like little squares, and they take up that amount of space. So a torch is 1 square, whereas like body armor might be 2 squares, so it will take up both of your slots, which is really simple. And as you use things, items, as you use them, they just deplete. So most things have kind of 3 uses that you tick off the boxes, and weapons you roll to see if they degrade, or if you spend ammo for using a sling and things like that. It's like a very nice, simple system. The spell system as well is very similar, in that you have runes, and to recharge the runes, you have to do kind of wild effects. So I can't remember which spell it is, but there's one that to recharge it, you have to fall 30 feet.
Oh my god.
Which for a mouse is a very long way.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. There's one where I think for catnip you have to befriend a cat or something like that, or make a promise to give a gift to a cat, I think. So they're kind of these like inventive, fun ways of offering you these little story hooks and ways of getting your characters to do things in order to recharge these.
Yeah, it's cool.
We played part of the adventure that is in the rulebook, the name of which I can't remember. But it's basically about a wagon of cheese that goes missing.
A wagon of cheese is missing. Matt Jarvis.
A wagon of cheese is missing. Yeah, somewhere between Oaks Grove and Stumpsville.
Oh my god, a sausage is missing.
If I lived anywhere in a fantasy world, it'd be called Stumpsville.
It's very charming. Like I said, it's very light. So that adventure, I think, is 2 pages, and it's just here's a map. Here are the kind of general outlines of like what's at each of these locations, like enemies that you encounter, which can range from centipedes and rats and things like that, up to cats and I think maybe even a boar.
Whoa!
But to take those down, you have to form what's known as a war band, which means you have 20 or more mice, and you have to pay them 1,000 pips a week to keep their services. Because you can also have little companions that come along with you, like hirelings, I think they're called, who kind of act as like side characters, and you have to pay them a certain amount of pips a week as well, which is, of course, the currency of Mausritter. But it's all very charming. It's very straightforward, but I had a really nice time with it. I was DMing it, and my friends were playing mice. But it was just a nice. It kind of reminded me of Quest in that it's very straightforward, but you get enough of the role playing,
it's not aimless
stuff.
Yeah.
And like combat is really boiled down, so you automatically hit, and then you just roll for damage, and you roll for damage. It's like a different polyhedral dice, so you could have a D4 for kind of an improvised weapon, up to like a D. I think some of them do D12s or even D20s, which when your health is not loads. So my wife has 1 HP because she rolled for it and she got 1. But luckily, after you run out of HP, you then start depleting your strength value. Right. So she has 9 strength. So she kind of has 9 hit points in total. But after you lose your HP, you start losing strength, and that eventually kind of incapacitates you or kills you.
That's quite cool, because then you actually get weaker as you go on. Like I quite like rules that have you sort of not just be like you go from either healthy to dead, or like, you know, something like that. It's kind of like in like Warhammer, where you have vehicles and you go through different profiles of stats depending on how much damage they take and stuff like that. I quite like that system.
I swear I've played a role-playing system where you have to choose one of your stats that kind of minus points off of every time you get hit or something. That rings a bell.
Probably.
But yeah, I like systems like that as well. Just it makes it. Again, it makes the mechanics kind of reflect what's going on in the game.
Makes it a bit less abstract.
Yeah, exactly. It's
But,
it's a bit like Deadlands, sort of. Where like when you take wounds, you minus like
that's right.
numbers off your results, which like kind of makes sense in
Yeah.
the case of you are less capable.
Oh yeah, and you start off at like you minus a d4, and then you actually start dropping things, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
you
like,
kind of like each like level of wounded, it gets worse and worse.
Yeah, it's like -1 for one wound, and then they stack. So
yeah.
So yeah, I really enjoyed what we played of it. We played about 2 to 3 hours, something like that. We got kind of halfway through this adventure, but we did a bit of the character creation at the start for some of the players who hadn't made their characters. But it's worth saying, I think we mentioned last time, Mausritter's website is very good. There is an auto character generator. I think there's also an adventure generator that just kind of spits out kind of very brief templates, or very kind of like sketched out templates for adventures. But the character generator is fantastic because it's not too hard to roll up a character anyway. The rulebook has some really nice stuff about, okay, what's your like star sign? Is it of the acorn? Okay, in that case you're stubborn, or something like that. And there are also general backgrounds, so it's like you can roll randomly for them. I think it kind of suggests that you roll randomly for them. So my wife ended up being a trash witch. No, not a trash witch. Someone else was a trash mouse.
I mean, that might have been me. I don't think I was playing this game though.
Maybe
I think that is just me. Yeah.
I think she was maybe like a garbage witch. She was like they're quite evocative. They're not your kind of usual classes, but they don't go super far into, okay, now I have to play like I'm just using magic. But it kind of, there are suggested starting items. You always start with rations, torches, but then you can have 1 or 2 items from your background. So like the person that was playing the trash mouse started with a trash hook, and that kind of thing. Yeah. Whereas my wife started with a rune for healing because they were a witch. So yeah, I really like it. I think I've got the physical set, but you can get it on itch. I think it's pay what you want. So if people are interested, go and check it out. It's very straightforward. Like, I think for anyone that is after something that's not D&D,
sounds like it'd be quite fun to play on the channel, to be honest.
it's a really lovely RPG. It's very simple. I will say that I adore the physical set because it comes with like a DM screen. It comes with another adventure. It comes with all the little item tokens and tiles and a pen and that kind of thing. It's just very pleasant, and I think at the moment that's kind of what we needed. Just something very pleasant to,
like a blanket.
Just trot around as mice. Yeah. So, although someone did cut a rat in half, so
whoa, violent!
They rolled really high on the damage. It was actually the trash hook. They just swung at this rat and just sliced them in half. So,
what is this hook made of?
Trash. Metal.
Wait.
Trash metal.
Is it made of trash or is it for hooking trash?
I think a trash hook is a certain thing. So when we were first chatting about it, I thought it was something similar to what Roadhog uses in Overwatch.
Right.
But I don't know if that's actually accurate.
I'm imagining like a bailing hook where you like grab and drag things.
Yeah. To drag the trash.
Apparently it's used by firefighters. Oh, it's more like a rake or a hoe. Like it's kind of got 2 points at the top and on a stick. So it's more for like combing through rubbish.
Okay.
But anyway, they're mice, so they're tiny, so it can be whatever you want.
There you go,
anyway.
everyone. Thanks for watching the Dicebreaker podcast. Now you know what a
Trash talk.
is.
Trash.
Welcome to Trash Talk.
Me and just start saying horrible things, mate.
But in short, I really liked Mausritter. I'm glad we finally got to play it. We were waiting to wrap up Monster of the Week. We ended up playing this instead, but I am looking forward to playing more of it. It feels also like something that you could very easily do one-shots with.
Yeah.
As well as campaign. Like, you gain experience as you go, but you can jump straight in. You can auto-generate characters instantly and get started very, very quickly. The rules are very easy. So,
Sweet.
all right, let's
Nice.
move on to this week's news. Speaking of beginner-friendly RPGs that we like a lot on this channel, Alex Meehan, tell us about this new quest.
Yeah, we're big fans of Quest, as people may know. And it's been announced that there's going to be a sci-fi version of the RPG called Quest Cosmic Fantasy Edition. So there was some artwork provided with the announcement. It looks really cool. And it's by the same artist who did the artwork for the original fantasy version of Quest. That artist is Grim Wilkin. So there's not a huge amount of detail as to what this edition will involve, aside from there'll be 7 new roles for players to make characters with. You can also use the roles in fantasy in the original version of Quest with this version, and vice versa. There will also be some new common ability paths, which is a system in the game where you basically, depending on what your role is, you can choose an ability, and because you've chosen an ability, that will open up some new options for you to choose more abilities from that when you get more points to spend. And there will also be a catalogue which will contain various pieces of items and equipment sort of themed around science fiction. So the sort of release date maybe for this version is 2022, but there was no caveat attached to that date, so it might be a Kickstarter campaign, it might be a full release. The recent Kickstarter that happened for Quest, which involves like a character book and a treasure book, apparently contains references to sort of aspects in the new version. So there are characters in the character book that are kind of applicable to this science fiction version. They called it a bridge between versions. Yeah.
Cool.
Looks interesting.
I would say it's a real shame they didn't call it Galaxy Quest. Come on, it was right
Might
there.
have been copyright issues.
I quite like that it's they're clearly doing science fantasy rather than science fiction. I think that's cool, because there's a lot of science fiction out there, not a whole lot of science fantasy, so that's quite cool.
Yeah.
It's one of the nice things. Oh, sorry, man.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's one of the things I liked about Quest, which my group and I played last year for a bit, is that although it's fantasy, it didn't just go with the typical tropes and stereotypes that you could play a spy and things like that.
Yeah.
Which you don't often see and it was a spy with gadgets, so it wasn't just kind of like it wasn't your typical fantasy affair. So you can kind of see how they might blend the two together here, because there were elements that crossed into or out of fantasy to begin with. So it's cool.
Yeah. The world of Quest is a very sort of left to your own interpretation style. So the GM is kind of allowed to sort of implement whatever they feel works in the game. Obviously, using things like the character book and the treasure book, could allow you to, use more of the official elements in there. And there are adventures that you can get for the game now too. But it was always an element of like subtle world building, in the sense that a lot of it came from maybe some of the items you use or some of the suggestions from the book, but it was very much left up to your interpretation. I imagine they're probably going to do a similar style with this new version, but it might also be a new opportunity to get other people into the game, which would be nice because we like it. So yeah,
cool.
There you go.
All right. It's also interesting. I think they announced, I believe you wrote the story on it, Meehan, about the supporting up and coming writers. So I wonder whether this throws the door open, beyond just people writing fantasy
Yes.
kind of settings or campaigns for Quest.
So the interesting thing about that, it's called the Adventure Award, I believe, was that if they had reached $100,000 fundraising for their recent campaign, they were going to kind of release, I think there were 20 applications for that. However, they are still going to release applications for it, I think, but on a smaller scale with this, with the fundraising total they got. They did, the Kickstarter has ended for the character book and they did reach their total. I think they got around $50,000, something like that. So they're still going ahead with it. It's just, I think, going to be a different scale. But that will be interesting, yeah.
All right. Moving on to news with a slightly different tone to it. Legend of the Five Rings is gone, or is going for the second time.
For the second time?
Well, yeah, 'cause it was originally a collectible card game.
Oh, right.
And so this is the living card game from Fantasy Flight. Alex Meehan, you also wrote this story.
I did write this story, Mr. Jarvis.
Please tell us about the future or not of Legend of the Five Rings, the card game. A nice short title.
Yes, I love that title. I love writing it. It's so good. I also love writing it when you have to say Legend of the Five Rings, the card game under Fuleng Shadow. It just really rolls off the tongue. So as Matt said, Legend of the Five Rings, the card game, is being discontinued by its publisher. That's Fantasy Flight Games. They also do the Arkham Horror card game and Keyforge. They didn't really give a solid explanation as to why they're doing it. I think they just said, the time has come for the title to reach its completion. With the Under Fuleng's Shadow is the last official expansion for the game. So because it's a living card game, they have set expansions rather than sort of random booster packs like a collectible card game would. So the expansion itself is coming out in May, and from then onwards, that's it for the card game. So Fantasy Flight did state that it will still be supporting the role-playing game that's made by Edge, but Fantasy Flight, I believe, publish it. And they'll also be releasing more books based in the world of Legend of the Five Rings. So that's Aconite Books, the publisher who are doing every single tabletop board game book adaptation in the world, along with several Marvel ones and such. That seems to
I'm just imagining whoever does sales for Aconite Books is the sort of monorail man from The Simpsons, just going from publisher to publisher, you need a book.
I've been to Marvelville, Assassin's Creed Town.
There are Assassin's Creed books. I've read them.
God.
A long time ago when I was obsessed with that
I
series.
remember reading, because I think my mum bought it for me for Christmas or something when I was a teenager. And it was literally it was just the plot of the video game. Novelized. So I was
just 6 pages
why does
of
this exist?
them.
I think we've read exactly the same book there.
I think it was the Brotherhood one.
Oh yeah, I read they did one on 2 and I really like that game. So
It's a great game.
It's a great game, yeah. We don't talk about video games here.
Oh, yes, we flipping do.
Yeah, so as Matt said, the game was originally a collectible card game published by Alderac Entertainment, but then Fantasy Flight acquired the rights and made it a living card game. But it is living no more. Ha ha. In a separate kind of post, Fantasy Flight claimed that they have, quote, hopes of holding an organised play event this year for the game. But obviously with COVID, who knows if that will happen, etc. Because they've already delayed their Keyforge World Championship to just next year. Although I imagine, no offence to Legend of the Five Rings, an organised play event might be a bit smaller than a Keyforged organised event, because I don't know exactly, don't hold me to this legally, But I wonder whether they're just finishing it because it's not like giving them the kind of profits that they want.
Is the idea that they are never going to print it again, or is the idea that this is just the last set they make and you can still buy it if you want?
They haven't stated specifically. Matt might know more about their Fantasy Flight
I suspect
discontinuation.
this just means that they're not going to print anymore.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised because I think if it was popular enough to keep going, they would just keep making expansions. So yeah, it's not gone the same way as Netrunner or Android Netrunner, which seemed to be more of a licensing fallout, as far as we can tell. This does kind of feel like there's not a lot of people buying this anymore.
Yeah,
time to bring it to an end. I think
kill it softly,
a lot
silently
of that from Fantasy Flight recently.
gently.
Legend of the Five Rings is such a strange one as well because it was relatively popular in the night. Like the collectible card game, I think had quite a following. And when they relaunched it, I really liked the gameplay of it. It was kind of like an interesting. You had 2 decks versus one, and you built up. I think they were called fortresses. You kind of had like different HQs or bases, similar to kind of servers in Netrunner, and then you have a line of defense against them.
Stuff, I remember sitting down to try and learn it and being like,
it's
quite a lot. Not beginner friendly, I don't think.
And you pay honor to characters, so you choose how much you put on them, and it kind of ticks down turn after turn, which is a really interesting concept of like, okay, you're going to put this amount on someone because you want them to just stay out and keep ticking over, whereas something that you might just want for one turn, you can pay less. To just have it kind of blast out a little bit. That stuff was all good. I think the theme is like, it's strange that they're keeping all the books because I think the theme is where it falls down more because it's got a touch of that kind of Orientalist.
It's a mixture of East Asian themes and kind of myths and things like that.
It's very sort of like white guy writing about Japan sort of thing. I mean, even just to the point where like honor is a token that you put on people to spend time. It's very much just like, oh, we'll just call this honor, I guess. Like it doesn't feel very sort of thought out in that regard. Like,
it's. I mean, I think the best thing that came out of Legend of the Five Rings is Battle for Rokugan. So Rokugan is the setting, but Battle for Rokugan is like a stripped down Game of Thrones, the board game. It's really good. It's really, really good. And I feel like that flew under the radar because nobody outside of the following of Legend of the Five Rings knew what Rokugan was or cared. And people who were playing Legend of the Five Rings were playing Legend of the Five Rings. Yeah. And seemingly there weren't that many of them to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, this follows the cancellation of Destiny. Wasn't there another game that they discontinued recently?
Yeah.
Was it another Star Wars game?
Right? Has anyone checked up on Fantasy Flight?
Oh yeah,
games?
they're just
Should we give them a knock? You're right, bud.
Is it the RPG studio that got gutted?
Yeah.
Take that with a pinch of salt. I don't know how much of that is anecdotal, but
I feel like Fantasy Flight very much have a corporate kind of strategy of like, let's just put our money on fewer things that can kind of like pump out like regular, profits from releases. So like the Arkham Horror, the card game, Arkham Horror Files in general seems to be quite obviously popular enough for them to still invest in. Keyforge, I think, has done well for them. Star Wars, they don't deal with so much anymore. That's what are they called?
The miniatures game. Atomic Mass.
Atomic Mass do that now, so they've kind of offloaded onto them, or more likely Asmodee did. So I mean, maybe they're just making more room to launch something new, which would be interesting.
Maybe.
Or
maybe they're just like in the middle of a pandemic, like everyone else. I guess,
I mean, they still do Marvel Champions as well, which I think is still going fairly strong. So.
Yeah, I wonder how much of Legend of the Five Rings' momentum was built up on the back of its community going to tournaments.
Organised events, yeah.
And without that for a year, maybe it was enough to tip it. Kind of similar to what we saw with Guild Ball, where Steamforge kind of openly came out and said, look, we can't hold tournaments, and so much of it is built on that.
Yeah.
So
competitive play, yeah.
Yeah.
So, sorry if you're a fan of the game.
Yeah, like you say, I wonder whether it will continue to be available in some form, whether you can go out and get that core set if you're after it, or whether it will just kind of slowly run dry now.
I'm sure if there are people in the community who are passionate about the game, just like Netrunner, then they might even try and make their own version of Legend of the Five Rings that won't be, hit with a legal notice by Fantasy Flight, because they've already managed that with Netrunner. Like, what's the Netrunner
Project
version?
Nisai.
Yeah.
I believe they've got a new set coming out soon, or they were maybe teasing an announcement. But yeah, it's interesting. Fantasy Flight, I think it was a couple of years ago now. The studio head at the time, I think, kind of said that they were slowing down on expansions because they kind of earned, rightfully to some degree, some flack for just putting out a game and then putting out 20 expansions within a year and really kind of sucking the world dry to some point. And they said, look, we're going to slow down. We're going to put out fewer expansions. We're going to see if something does well before we put out expansions for it.
Yeah.
So maybe this is part of that. Maybe they are looking at more kind of self-contained, like quote unquote, complete games. Because that also might be where the audience is, because a lot of people pick up a game that's in a box and don't buy any expansions. So
they don't want to invest in it. Like things like living card games require, investment if you want to keep up with it. So it might be the case that they're changing their strategy with that, but which I'm kind of on board on, because I'd rather see some more kind of like Keyforge is great. I like Keyforge, but Keyforge still feels fresh because it's not been out that long, and it kind of had a unique sort of edge to it. But I would rather see them do more things like, not exactly like Keyforge, but like in terms of this is something new and like, it's got something interesting about it, than just pumping out the same old.
Yeah, I wonder how much of an investment that sort of randomized printing stuff was, because they also had that like, what was it, Discover Lands
Unknown,
which just fell on its face completely. So yeah, maybe they're just sort of reeling back from that a little bit. Like there's probably a lot of things behind the scenes that we don't really know about.
That's probably why they didn't provide an actual reason.
Yeah, it's worth being upfront here and saying that we're largely just kind of
speculating. But
we don't have any inside knowledge on Fantasy Flight's working, more so than pretty much anyone else. All right, Alex Meehan, you also wrote this one.
I'm on a roll.
So I'm throwing all the news your way because you've already written it. It's new information about the D&D film. What feels like almost a weekly occurrence at this point.
We love it. You can't get enough of it. I've now been just known as the D&D movie correspondent for Dicebreaker.
Where's Danny
DeVito? Sorry, there's another small fly just buzzing around. Maybe it wants to know the latest news for the D&D.
I like that we're about to talk about a Bridgerton star, and you were like,
a
fly!
A small fly! You spoiled the big reveal, Will. It's good though.
I've not seen Bridgerton. My understanding of it is that it's like,
I know that it's old-timey.
Isn't it just like Pride and Prejudice, but with more sex?
Can't believe this. Can't believe this blasphemy. As someone who did watch Bridgerton and enjoyed it in a kind of like indulgent way. It's very indulgent. It's just like the costumes are a lot. It has classical covers of modern songs, like Bad Guy. It's a lot, but it's got a really good cast, and someone from that cast has joined the D&D film. Reggie Jean Page, I hope I'm saying your name correctly, if you're even listening to this, who plays, you never know, they're known for the role as Duke of Hastings from Bridgerton. He's a very sort of stoic and mysterious man. They have been reported as taking a leading role in the film. Although, yet again, we don't know who their character is, what their story arc's going to be, etc., etc. Just know that they're going to be in it.
Speculating on this, so
hello, yes.
Was the last Chris Pine was the first person announced as being in the cast, and Chris Pine was announced as a leading role.
Yes.
Michelle Rodriguez and Justice Smith weren't
No.
said to be leading roles.
No.
So is this? Are we seeing the party slowly build out potentially? Is it Chris Pine
depends,
and
because again, we don't know what the story is going to be like, because
True.
we don't know whether it's going to be like it's set in the modern world and these people are playing D&D, or whether it's like fully set in D&D, like whether it's didactic. Is that correct? Like didactic? Yeah. Or, you know, because no one apparently needs to release any story details. All we need to know is that it's there and that these people are going to be in it. So it just leaves us to speculate, and speculate we have done. Yeah.
Is it just Bridgerton with more tieflings?
God, I'd love that. I genuinely would love that. If they make the new D&D film Bridgerton with more tieflings, I will watch that. Also make it like very adult, please. Thank you very much.
Look,
I want to see them
the
do
internet
that.
exists. Like, you know how to use Google. Yeah.
I want to see them have the courage to do that, and I would thank them. They would have at least one person.
A tiefling hanging dong.
Yes.
On screen.
Do it, you cowards! Do
and
it.
Make it Danny DeVito.
Make it Danny DeVito. Yes.
Danny DeVito tiefling, Starkers, full Monty.
Yeah.
On an ultra wide IMAX screen. That's what we want.
I'd clap in the cinema if I saw that.
Standing ovation.
Yeah. Oh, Matt.
Big headline on Dicebreaker.com. Finally, someone
Finally.
had the guts.
Had the guts.
D&D and D.
No, it'd be D&D,
D&D,
and D.
Oh, God. Okay.
Oh, goodness.
Well,
yeah.
it seems like we don't have much more information other than here are some of the people in it.
The thing is, I think that Paige is a good actor. Like I've not seen them in a lot. They were in the Mortal Engines film, which I do not remember that.
I don't think anyone saw that.
I saw it and it was awful.
It
it was really quite bad, and I think it was so bad that I just didn't realise that Paige was in it. The cast is slowly being built up. I hope they put in some people who are maybe a bit less known, because I always like it when films take a chance on some, you know.
The problem with the Dungeons and Dragons film is that it's never going to live up to the cinematic universe that we've created on this series of podcasts. Because the amount of details that we've just thought up that are just leagues above whatever some cowardly studio exec would bow down to.
Yeah,
they're never going to they're going to live up to the fantastic film ideas that we put forward. What I'm saying is, Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah, we're here.
Put us on the writing team. Utilize us. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Heard our ideas. Like we've already sold you the pitch. We don't even need to go into a meeting. Just give us the rights.
Here's my portfolio. It's 7
Doc.
podcasts of us telling you that D&D is bad, but then also telling you what you should do with the D&D film.
Look, Matt, the official D&D is bad, but our version of D&D is good. Like that's the difference.
Okay, so Matt, don't put this in the final cut of the podcast, because we don't want Wizards of the Coast to hear it. But what we're going to do is, when we get the job, the whole plot is going to be about, there's this secret artifact, there's this secret scroll that they have to find, and right at the end of the film they finally find the scroll and they unfurl it and it just says, play any other RPG please, I'm begging you.
Oh, that would be a twist, wouldn't it?
It's just the Dicebreaker article page for 10 best RPGs.
Also, how are they going to live up to aside from, it's never going to be as good as what we imagine it to be, nor what the fans want. Like, how are they going to live up to the legacy of the original D&D film? That's what I want to know. Like, they've got big shoes to fill. Is there going to be a Blue Lips Man? That's what I want to know. Because if there isn't, I'm going to be outraged.
When is it due out? It's due out next April, isn't it?
It's got a very specific date.
Next year. April, May.
It's got a very specific date of...
Oh, you better know it then, Meehan.
I know it off by heart. It's May 27th, 2022.
It's not that. I mean, just over a year away.
And we still know nothing about what actually happened in the film. So
yeah, well, we'll see. One way or another. Well, I say this. That film will come out, but who knows?
yeah, we'll go see it as a group, and we'll heckle in the cinema. I'll get thrown out.
We probably do have to go see it.
Yeah, we
Maybe
probably have to go and see it.
Maybe we do a live watch along
from the back of the
From the
cinema. I'll bring the camcorder.
We'll just have a... we get thrown out quicker than you.
Just pirating the new D&D film.
No, we won't point out the screen. We'll just do reaction shots. You know,
yeah,
like
whoa!
yeah, whoa! There's just
You'll never guess how big Danny DeVito's dong is.
just a footage of me standing up, crying, like weeping, like clapping. Like I've never seen anything so beautiful.
Right.
Oh man.
In a related note,
On a related
Gloomier.
note.
Gloom.
Gloomier, A Night at Hemlock Hall.
Oh.
Alex, you wrote this story, but it appears to be a sequel to Gloom.
Yeah.
Called Gloomier.
This sort of
I like that it's called Gloomier.
Yeah.
That's good.
I think the next game should be called Gloomiest.
What about even Gloomier?
Ooh.
Maybe that's the expansion.
Yeah, that's the expansion. This dropped into my inbox last week. It's a direct sequel to Gloom. So Gloom has a lot of expansions, and when I say a lot, I mean a lot. Or like spin-off versions and things like that. But this seems to be the first kind of direct sequel to the game. Called Gloomier, A Night at Hemlock Hall. It's going to be set in the same kind of location as the original game, the aforementioned Hemlock Hall. And apparently it's going to contain even more woe and misery for this poor family that you control. So if you don't know what you do in Gloom, it's a card game that's kind of like a storytelling game, but kind of just like within a card game, where you layer these transparent cards on top of character cards to kind of determine like what terrible things happen to them. And the aim of the game is to kind of make sure your characters end up in the most miserable state possible by the end. And like other players can kind of play cards on your characters to make them happy, which is not what you want.
It is a really good theme. I really like the theme of Gloom. It's properly like tongue-in-cheek dark comedy.
Yeah, it's very much like, oh, whoa, what terrible thing has happened. We're going into Bridgerton again.
We're going into all of your RPG characters, me.
There's going to be a Kickstarter campaign for the game. That's going to launch on March 9th, so not far away.
That's my birthday.
That's your birthday. That's yours.
It's all happening on your birthday.
It's all happening on March 9th.
Yeah, they know exactly what they're doing. There's also going to be an expansion released for Gloom called the Gloom Chronicles, which will basically
It's not as good a name, is it?
Not quite.
It's not as good a name as Gloomier.
No, it's not. But you can't. You can't
have it all.
You can't have it all. That's what
You
you've
can't
learned.
have Danny DeVito and Deep Pang's dog at the same time. You need to pick.
Oh my goodness. This is definitely at the explicit tag on iTunes.
Hang's dong is not an explicit term.
I'm pretty sure there's a limit on how many times you can say it.
We blasted
You're really, I know
beg
you're
to
trying,
differ,
Wills. I know you're trying.
There's not a huge amount of information on what you actually do in the game yet, other than that there'll be 14 new guests and 110 cards, transparent cards that you can use in the game, and it will be compatible with all the previous release titles in the series. So if you're a fan of Gloom, Gloomier.
Oh, Gloomier.
There you go.
It's been a while since I played Gloom. I remember liking it at the time, but I feel like it's maybe one of those games that you play with, like, I remember playing it around the same time as things like Munchkin, and then just being like, moving on. But
That's
I don't remember.
Carry on.
It's fine.
Yeah.
People love it though. They love that Gloom.
It's a good theme. Like the transparent cards are really clever. I think it does a lot to kind of lift up the gameplay, which, as I remember, is kind of straightforward. Is just you stacking cards.
It's basically a take that game, right? But
yeah,
I was kind of like,
Well, I hope not.
Stop it, you. I was kind of surprised that like the whole acetate cards thing didn't really do much more, because there was that Druids game that kind of sucked.
I know that one.
Was the one that comes with sleeves, or is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah,
that had
like,
a sequel, I think. Or
yeah, I don't think many people liked it.
Maybe,
yeah. But I mean, apart from that, can you think of anything else that's got this kind of?
There was that Canvas game.
That's true. That's recent.
There was a game called Canvas on Kickstarter last year, I think, that you layer over transparent cards to create like portraits, and then you score off like whether you've fulfilled certain, like you've got to have this kind of color or pattern on your card, and that looked really interesting. Kind of regret not packing that, to be honest, but I think I was like, I have no money at the moment, so it looked really good though. I don't think it kind of shot off, but
so Mystic Veil, is that
Mystic Veil?
I've heard of that game.
Yeah, I think they that publisher, or maybe the same designer, made a follow-up or like a spiritual successor, Custom Heroes, which appears to be relatively similar.
What a recognisable name, Custom Heroes.
Yeah,
but that really springs out.
I'll take the opportunity here to say that Ben Burns recently wrote for the website about, because Gloom was designed by Keith Baker, who also created Eberron for D&D.
Yeah.
And Ben Burns recently wrote a fantastic article about the creation of Eberron, because it was for a contest in 2002.
Yeah.
That Wizards of the Coast ran, that Keith Baker.
Oh yeah, no, sorry, I remember seeing this article. Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. Maybe we could convince them to do a contest to write the D&D film, and then we win it.
But then what if we lose the contest, Mia?
We won't. That won't happen.
We fed all of the D&D films so far into an AI and got it to write the new D&D film.
Can't lose with that method. Yeah.
And it was better than the original script. Okay.
All right. Shall we move on to emails?
We've got one left.
Nah. If you've got an email for... Hey, look, we've got a schedule to keep to, and it runs over every time.
Matt is sat there with a cigar in his mouth. And he's got a moustache.
I love Beasts of Balance as much as anybody else.
There's a new Beasts of Balance game, and you make a chimera and they fight each other. Coming soon. Thanks, Chase.
Yeah,
thank
you.
You're like sat there going, no, we don't want that.
I like Beasts of Balance.
Bring me more pictures of Danny DeVito.
But the thing I like more than Beasts of Balance and Danny DeVito is emails from you, the listeners.
Bring me pictures of those emails.
This is like being the captain of a ship, but the ship is lodged onto rocks already. And
it's a captain of a rowboat, but there's only one person rowing on one side, so you're just spinning around.
Yeah,
just
Will's
getting
and I
washed further and further onto the rocks.
We're fighting over the last bottle of grog.
They're all dong-shaped. Emails. If you've got emails for us, you can reach us at podcast@dicebreaker.com. You can find us on Twitter at @joindicebreaker. You can find us on the internet at dicebreaker.com or youtube.com/dicebreaker. Let's take this first one. Wills, could you read this one from Zach, please?
Hi all, I'm usually a Euro gamer, but you all have inspired me. See, now when it said that, I thought that was like a name for the fans of Eurogamer, the site, but no, it's people who play Euro games. This is going to get confusing, isn't it? Hello, hi all, I'm usually a Euro gamer, but you've all inspired me to pick up Blaze in the Dark. I've read the book from front to back, but I'm pretty intimidated with running a game with my group, with none of us ever having played an RPG. Personally, I find having the required imagination and reacting to fast-paced developing situations pretty daunting. Do you have any advice on embarking into the RPG realm? And that was from Zach. Thank you very much for your question, Zach. So yeah, we talked about Blaze in the Dark a lot on this channel. It's one of our favourites. John Harper and partly Sean Nittner as well, I believe, who also wrote Aegon, which we played on the channel. So like a lot of John Harper love, and Blazes and Feelings that we also played on the channel. A lot of John Harper love on this channel. The reason for that being, I think he's a very good systemic designer, which will help you a lot when you're running this thing. So with Blades in the Dark, I tend to find it's really modular. So when you read through the whole book, you're like, whoa, that's a lot of things to learn. But in actual fact, like, you can pretty much take out any of those chunks, and because it's a strong system, it still runs. Like, you could just be like, let's just use the dice mechanic, and you can run a game via that. As you get more comfortable with things, as you move on, you can gradually introduce new stuff onto the mechanics that you're already familiar with, and just sort of expand your scope a little bit. And it comes with like a pre-made sort of like prompt of how to run your first adventure as well in Crowsfoot. So there's quite a lot in the book there that will just sort of steer you the right way. One thing that I will say is I think every person who has ever D&D or anything like run their first session of anything before, they always over prep. This is like a pretty common thing. I did it. I'm sure other people who are massive RPG fans who are like hugely into it now and can run one off the back of their hand have also just completely over prepped before as well. Try not to just cram knowledge into your brain, because you're already trying to remember how the game works. You're already trying to like run this system with your friends. So like the more info that you have overloaded in your brain, the more difficult it is, the more you're just going to sit there in like paralysis trying to like remember what you were trying to do. The whole point of Blades in the Dark is that it's meant to be player driven. So you as the GM actually have a little bit more of a relaxed state, because you can lean on the players to sort of push what they want to do. So if you're starting a new session, you know, after you've done like your session 0 and you've gotten comfortable a bit more, you don't have to prep a whole new adventure for them, because they'll be like, hey, we want to try and do this. And then at that point, you just use all of the systems in the book, because they're designed to be like prompts for you to just jump straight into what you're doing. So you've got like the faction mechanics, for example. Oh, we need some enemies. I'm just going to flick through the faction book and look at some of the people that are like around this part of the town. Do they need something to do? Well, they've got their crew sheet, which has all kinds of upgrades that they can follow. So sometimes they might just want to go for that, and you can do a little short adventure. Another great thing about Blades in the Dark is that it's basically like, I mean, it's inspired by Powered by the Apocalypse. It's got that whole sort of like movie feel to it. So you can just jump from scene to scene. You can just ignore the in-betweens. You've got the flashback mechanics, so that you can just introduce stuff that you forgot. Like there's loads of tools in there which are designed to stop you being stuck in the middle of something. And a lot of the time you'll also watch, you know, like Dungeon Breaker, you'll watch sessions of like D&D or anything like that, where games are a little bit more linear and things have to be like, okay, now what happens next? What happens next? What happens next? The freeing things about games like that, about games like Powered by the Apocalypse, things like that, is that you can just sort of say, you know what, this bit's a bit boring. Let's fast forward to when you get to the place where we're supposed to be. We're doing this. And like the book will tell you from the get-go, the action starts at the start of the session. There's no preamble. There's no trying to set up what you're trying to do. It's just, let's get straight into it. That's why you've got the roll that's kicked things off. Everything is just designed to be played in the moment. So just embrace it. And it'll be a little bit daunting at first, because you have to do a lot of like improvising and things like that. But that's part of the game. It's part of the fun. And the more you do it, the better you'll get and the better GM you'll be.
Yeah, I think if anything, playing with a group where nobody is familiar with RPGs is in some ways better, because you're all learning at once. Like, there's no reason for you to feel intimidated, because everyone will have questions. Everyone will kind of need to take a moment every now and then to check the rule book, or just to think of what they do next. So I think we've kind of said this a lot of times in the past, but it is such a crucial thing. I think a lot of people get into RPGs because they watch actual plays or video series like Critical Role or Adventure Zone or Dungeon Breaker, Oxventure, whatever it might be, and they immediately think that their own game should look like that.
Yeah.
But they don't for so many reasons, partly because those are people that do it for jobs. So sometimes they are literally professional actors who do a completely different job. They are edited. They are very different to at-home games with your friends, where you can take a moment to be like, hey, I'm not sure what I want to do. Do you mind giving me a sec? Or can you come back to me in a little bit? You know, you're there to have fun ultimately. So as long as everyone is just giving each other space to have those moments where you might not be able to react straight away, but that doesn't mean that your character doesn't react straight away. You can think it through. You can almost pause time and think, okay, I'm going to look through my skill sheet. I'm going to look through my traits. I'm going to think about what happens. Or you can even ask someone else, like, do you want to do this action with me? If you're coming from Eurogames, I think particularly it's, think of it in the same way that you might approach like a hefty kind of strategy game for the first time. The first time you play, you probably aren't going to be particularly good at winning or scoring a lot of points because you're just getting the mechanics under your belt. You're learning how things actually move forward. But 3, 4, 5 plays in, you'll feel a lot more comfortable. You'll kind of be at home with the basics. So that will let everything else come out. It will let you experiment and try different combinations. And because your whole group is doing that at the same time, you'll all be doing that together. So it's fine if you have a couple of sessions where almost nothing happens and you don't have to have like a fully satisfying arc. You don't have to have a beginning, middle and end and something big happens by the end. And you can just have, okay, we started off in a tavern or like a classic, meet cute. And by the end of the session, maybe 2 hours in, we're just starting to think about where we want, to take our characters next for the actual action. But your characters by that point. You kind of know how they interact with each other because that's all part of it too. So just take it easy on yourself. You're there to have fun. So as long as you are all kind of being considerate with each other and just being like, hey, do what you want to do what you feel is right. And if it doesn't work out, it's not a problem because you're not there to win and to be the most, you're not there to score points or anything like that. You're there to have fun and tell a story together. So
I have one thing to say. Don't be embarrassed. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to retcon as well. You did something at the start and you're like, that was a bit dumb actually because we were still figuring it out. It didn't happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Blades is especially good. Like the flashback mechanic is lovely for that because it's like, oh, I forgot that I should have something, but it's like, actually, you can go back and make it fit in a way that's actually supported by the mechanics.
Yeah.
So yeah, Blades is a really good system to start with. I think it's a lot of people dive in with D&D, and D&D is crunchy and slightly old.
Like a crisp.
Like a crisp you drop down the back of the sofa for too long. And
that
it's also
would
got,
not be crunchy. I'm sorry.
It's also got a sprinkle of racism on it still. Thank you, Zach. Alex Meehan, would you like to read this one from Astray Jose?
Yes.
Or Astray Jose?
I can do that. Do you guys have any advice playing a tabletop RPG set in an established world like Star Trek, Star Wars, Dishonored, Lord of the Rings? I am completely terrified that I'll miss something or not understand how the world works, or make a story that doesn't fit in. That was Astray Jose.
I mean, we played a Warhammer RPG recently.
Yeah, and I have no idea what's going on with Warhammer.
Well, I mean, you weren't running it, Meehan. I mean, like...
You played Warhammer a little bit.
Yeah, I like the Warhammer world. I don't know Age of Sigmar anywhere near as well as I know the old world. And even then, like, I know it to the degree that I've played it a lot in video games sort of thing. And that can be a bit daunting, especially if you're GMing it. But, like, at the end of the day, the more honest you are with your players about, like, does anyone know what this thing's called? Or like, oh, do you mind if you give me a second to just Google something to check how something works? Like, the more you're just gonna feel a bit more comfortable about it. I think at the end of the day, like, it's a conversation with your group, right? It's like, hey, if I get things a little bit wrong, feel free to tell me and we can shift things around. Or it's an RPG. It doesn't have to be 1-to-1. You can be in like the idea of Lord of the Rings without having to be like, oh, Gandalf just walked past. That means that this has to happen. Like you can just sort of enjoy the setting for its like its key features rather than the nitty gritty details. And it'll depend on your players. If they're super into the lore, then one, maybe they should GM. Two, lean on their knowledge rather than be scared of it.
Yeah, I would probably say I wouldn't recommend playing a tabletop role-playing game set in an established universe if you're not a fan of it. This is to me, there's not much point because you might as well play something else where you can kind of make the world yourself, or play an RPG set in a universe that you are a fan of. Like, I would say more than anything, the GM needs to have like a real passion for that world because you're making the stories in it. Like, again, I don't think an encyclopedic knowledge of everything is required, because if you're, the people you're playing with are calling you out on things, then yeah, tell them to stop doing that, because it's not okay and it's just not fun to do. Yeah, I just think that a lot of people are like, oh, we'll play this RPG because it's popular and it's there, and I'm just like, well, you could just play an RPG that isn't set in an established world if you're not sure about it. Otherwise, like, RPGs that are set in established worlds, the book should help you get to grips with the world, as part of what it's there for. Like, it's also there to be an aid for, like, hey, this is what this kind of is, this is what the deal is in this world. So, like, that's something the Dishonored RPG did really well. Like, as much as that system was flawed, like, the lore in that book was excellent, and it kind of gave you a really good rundown of the stuff that is worth knowing. Like, here are the main themes of the world, and, here's kind of what's going on at the moment, and you can use those core elements to make a story. You don't have to necessarily know about what exactly happened at this date with who. It should just be, like I'm passionate about, this kind of atmosphere or themes or etc.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add to that. I think, like you both kind of said, ask yourself why you're playing in that universe. I would generally avoid anything that, like, characters, like you say, Will's, like, just avoid characters that you kind of already know, because it's never going to feel... I think that's putting way too much pressure on yourself to try and embody a character that already exists. But you can just use it as a backdrop, for whatever reason. If you just like a particular place, it's like, oh, I want to go to Minas Tirith. It's like, go to Minas Tirith. But don't worry about how that fits into the whole of Middle-earth or anything like that.
Yeah.
You can just pick and choose the bits you want. It's your world. It's not necessarily, you might start with the world that you know, but at some point it's your version of whatever world you're playing in. So it doesn't matter where you take it, as long as all of, you and your players are happy with it.
Yeah, as long as you're experiencing and enjoying the parts of that world that you like, that's all that matters, really. You don't need to like chronologically follow exactly what happens in the plot.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you for your question. Wills, I'll throw this one back at you from Polycythemia Vera.
Polycythemia Vera, I think. I've seen the name on other channels and stuff, but Polycythema, I think is how I usually say it. Might be wrong, but we'll find out. Says, hello all. I was wondering if the Dicebreaker team had any advice or experiences with conflict resolution at the brackets board gaming table. Some friends of mine are more on the competitive side, and some others get so invested in gameplay, even cooperative gameplay, that they can get mad if you don't take your turn exactly the way that they suggest. I tend to be the peacekeeping type, so...
Sorry, carry on. Matt was making a face that made me laugh. Go on.
So there is a word that we have for that in the sort of board game community. It's called, like, table captaining.
Quarterbacking, right?
Or quarterbacking, yeah, it can suck. But hold on, let me just read out the rest of the question. So I tend to be the peacekeeping type, so I try to smooth things over and remind everyone we're here to have fun together, but I would welcome any insight or advice y'all might have for future sessions. Sorry. Thanks in advance, you beautiful meeple. Regards, Polycythema Vera. So, thank you for your question. It's a tough one because, I mean, at the end of the day, sometimes the people that you're playing with have to learn how to be good humans. So, sometimes it's an honest conversation, especially, I mean, if there's been multiple people at the table, you can sense a feeling as bad about it as you are. Maybe it's a sense of, hey, we've all been feeling like this, so that you're not necessarily singling yourself out as the person who has to be like the bearer of bad news kind of thing. But if it's genuinely making you have less fun, then like it will behoove you to have an honest conversation with the people who are sort of perpetrating that negative attitude and trying to see, one, if they realize they're doing it, two, if they do realize why they think that's okay, and 3, if there's nothing else to be gained from it because they're just like, no, this is how I play games, screw you. Maybe find somebody else to play with, because it is like a negative attitude to bring into the space, and if it's stopping you from enjoying things, maybe just say, well, I'm not sure I really want to play with you. That's how you play games. It's a really difficult conversation to have. So much so that Toto has come to lend some advice, apparently.
Yeah.
But yeah, it sucks. It's a bad position to be in. Table captaining and quarterbacking is the worst, because our own Alex Lowleys used to really dislike co-op games, but I'm not sure if this is 100% the case, but we kind of find out that every time she played them, there was always just some person who decided that they were in charge, and it can really ruin and hamper the enjoyment of the night. So, but yeah, I don't know if you guys have got anything ever to recommend, but it's a difficult one to navigate.
Yeah, I think you're right in that sometimes it just comes down to, like, if they're doing it, like if they're doing it again and again, and it's kind of brought up gently a couple of times, at some point, if it's impacting the enjoyment of everyone else at the table, that's a wider thing that can, needs to be discussed. Like, it's a hard one, right? Because you just, it's kind of interpersonal things. Like, it can come down to the friendship group. It can come down to, but some people are just like that, even with strangers and with friends. And sometimes it's not deliberate, but that doesn't make it right, because then it's still impacting other people's enjoyment. So if you bring it up and they're like, oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't notice I was doing it, and it stops, great. But if it then continues, and it's, from the sounds of it, if they're getting mad that multiple people aren't kind of following their like instructions at some point, that just sounds like maybe that's not someone you want to have at your table, which is a really hard thing to do. But if, again, kind of like we were saying with RPGs, you're there to have fun at the end of the day. Yeah. Like, some people have fun by scoring a lot of points. They can have fun by doing that by themselves. Other people just like to have fun and play the game, and it doesn't matter how many points they score. So they should be able to do that as well,
I have a fairly low tolerance for this kind of behaviour, because I've been at the sort of like receiving end of people who take games very seriously, and they're incredibly competitive to the point where they're aggressive, and it's enough to kind of put people off, like playing, like, getting involved in the hobby, especially, let's just face it, as a woman who's gone into like a board game cafe and wanted to play games with people and kind of meet friends through that. It is a kind of jarring experience to have, like, to kind of be treated like, okay, you just sit there and I tell you what to do, or like I know how to play this game, and like if I'm not getting the results I want, I'm going to cause, like, I'm going to get aggro and stuff. And it kind of disappoints me, because it's like, I think it puts people who are a bit more like, oh, I'm not sure what I'm doing here, a little bit uncertain, off the hobby, because they're like, what if everyone is like this that play games, or what if I need to be like this because this is how you play board games? And I think that really sucks, because ultimately playing games is about having fun. It's not about winning, like, especially co-op games. It's about like a collaborative experience. You don't just sit there and tell people what to do, and when they say no, go away, you don't get aggro about that. So I think it is a case of, I think it's worth standing up for yourself, and especially others, if you think they're doing it to them as well. And initially, broach like a conversation and say, hey, this is how you make me feel when playing games, and I don't get enjoyment out of that. And I think unless you change your behaviour, I don't really want to play with you. Like, I think you just, like, don't let other people's behaviour spoil your enjoyment of the hobby, because it's not worth it. Like, yeah,
absolutely. I and like, there's bad actors in any space, and even if it kind of soils your mood a bit but doesn't ruin your night, doesn't mean that it's not way worse to someone else as well. So like, if you if you try and cut that out, whether it's by having just a frank conversation with the person and helping them to improve their behavior, or if they really don't want to change, if it's just a case of saying, hey, maybe I'm just not going to invite you anymore, then like it stops other people from feeling like they're being gatekeeped out of the community as well. So like sometimes those difficult conversations with one person can lead to way more enjoyment had with multiple other people. So like it's a nasty thing to have, but like you clearly care enough by asking us, like, and that's a really good thing. So like it's a really good question. Thank you for asking to us, and I hope it pans out for you. Like, see what happens, I guess.
If they don't do anything, I'll send me after it.
We'll call in the Meehan.
I'll sort
the
that
attack,
out.
the attack chopper rather than the news chopper.
Yeah, that's my alter ego attack chopper.
There are 2 choppers inside of every person.
All right, let's finish on this one from a friend of the site, Matt Cox.
That big Matt Cox, everyone.
Who has written for the site and is a former colleague of ours. So it's good to hear from you, Matt. If you had to live inside the world of any board game, which would you choose and why?
Ooh. See, the problem is with questions like this is that you can find worlds really beautiful, and then you think about actually living in them, and you're like, oh, I bet it really stinks in this place, though. Like, like I bet I'd probably die quite quickly. Like, Root is a very beautiful place, but I don't know if I'd want to live there.
Stabbed by 12 badgers with spears.
Exactly.
Yeah, very violent world. I mean, yeah, because obviously a lot of board games are about conflict. So it means that if you're in that world, you're probably going to get involved in that conflict, which is not very fun. So probably something like Cottage Garden, or like something very chill where you're just hanging out somewhere, just like making a nice garden. Although I guess you could argue it's a bit boring. Like, I could just go to a garden right now and just hang out there. So maybe something a bit more exciting. Maybe like Everdell or something.
Oh, Everdell's brilliant.
Everdell's nice. You get to be a bunny rabbit.
I think I would want to live in Tokaido. Because that is a gorgeous world, and it's literally just about going on holiday to Japan, which is something I want to do anyway. So I think that's like a good place to be.
I mean, I've lived that, Will, so...
You've never mentioned it, me.
Little inside joke there, little inside joke.
I must have bled into a video before.
Probably.
I don't see. I don't know. It's like you say. There are so many games about conflict that at some
Container.
point. Hey, I would.
We already live in that world.
All I want is efficient organisation of very mundane objects, and Container absolutely fills that for me.
Matt wants to live in a train set. That's what Matt wants.
Yeah,
fair, Ticket to Ride would be lovely, right? It's like you're just travelling around the world. I'd go for Ticket to Ride.
Yeah,
I think
but then
you took
end up as
Tokaido,
one of the railway workers. This is the problem.
Yeah, you'd end up in
Just
Tokyo.
We're not millionaire moguls. We can't just like travel around with everyone, build a big station.
Yeah, I genuinely don't know. I feel like I wouldn't want to, because the kind of games that tend to be popular are either about economy, and I don't want to be a big business person dealing with economy stuff.
Big money, Matt.
Like colonialism, and I don't really want to be anywhere near any of that.
Yeah.
So I just need like you say, a cottage garden. Cottage garden is probably like my ideal Sunday.
Yeah.
So just outside in the sun with some cats curled up in the dirt. There we go.
What's that high tea game as well?
Dragon Tea Party?
Club?
Yeah, Dragon Tea Party, something like that.
Yeah.
Something really zen. I think what if we lived in Pipeline, but instead of the pipes being full of oil, it was just us just sort of zipping around.
Like Futurama style.
I mean,
Except the pipes aren't always finished, are they? So you just zip out the end and go plow straight into the floor.
Yeah, and then you just like, I don't know, SeaWorld. Oh, not SeaWorld.
No, I don't want to go to SeaWorld.
A water park of some description.
I think we might have had this conversation before. I think we've had a similar question, because I've said camel up before, because I just want to like
sipping mint juleps.
Yeah, just drink mint juleps and just watch camels ride around. But camel up seems to be an answer I have to a lot of questions for some reason. I don't know whether that's just because it's a game that comes
It's
to
your
my
brand,
mind a
that's
lot,
why, yeah.
or whether it's because like it's just a good answer to a lot of questions.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, camel's a bit of a goobery animal, so like it's just like a big goober.
I don't know. It's not like high. I wouldn't call it high on the goober scale because it's too big. Like goobers are
But
traditionally.
of all the real world animals in the world, I think camels are at least on the list.
I'd say they're on the list, but they're not like higher up on the goober scale. Like
they're too big to be goobers in some ways.
Yeah. Imagine being a posh lady with a big hat,
yeah,
drinking mint juleps, watching goobers.
yeah. I would love that.
That's me into a T.
Yeah, that's what I want to do. Obviously under an umbrella, because if I wasn't, I would just like sizzle to a crisp.
Being fanned by some hunky man.
Or woman. That's enough of that. It's starting to go into dangerous territory again. This has already been saucy enough. Saucy and slow.
Another reference to something that happened outside of the podcast that just doesn't. This is what happens when we're not on camera. It's just. It's nightmarish. All right, that is about all the time we've got for emails. But before we leave you, Michael Wills Whelan, representative of the video team.
Look,
you need like a little flag, like at the UN with the YouTube. What have we got coming up on youtube.com/Dicebreaker this coming week or past week?
Well, Matt Jarvis, so today we are filming, and then tomorrow it will be coming out, by which point it would have been 2 days ago when you watched this podcast, where we're going to be playing Umbravia, which was the winner of the Cardboard Edison.
Yeah, I know this game.
Very interesting.
I'm very excited to hear your thoughts on this because it looked really cool.
We're going to be playing it with a designer. It looks very, very cool. It's all about souls trying to find their way. We've got a painting stream that would have been the day before. And then tomorrow, from the day that you're listening to this on Friday, if you do watch this when it comes out, we will be airing the last episode, the final episode of our Age of Sigmar Soulbound campaign. To see what happens to our intrepid Soulbound in that one. On Sunday, we've got another You've Never Played video coming out. And I'm going to be showing Johnny, after the news that a new edition is on the way from Plaid Hat, I'm going to be showing Johnny Summoner Wars, one of my favourite games, which I really don't get to play enough, and I absolutely adore. So look forward to that. Summoner Wars coming up soon.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Look. Yes, sir!
I'm excited. I've never played Summoner Wars. I played Crystal Clans, which I think was like the spiritual successor, and I like that a lot.
I think is far inferior. So if you like Crystal Clans, I reckon you'd love Summoner Wars. Maybe we should get you on that you've never played, Mac.
I would be interested to check it out. Meanwhile, over on the website, I wasn't here last week, but I'll give a little shout out to some bits that went up last week. We had Sharang Biswas chatting about indie RPGs, which was a fantastic piece. We had Samantha Zine, a Rangerful from the community, appear on the website writing about public libraries and how they're kind of providing a safe space for folks to go and play D&D and other RPGs and kind of get their first taste without some of the requirements that you might need at home. We already have up, as of this recording, you can go and read Michael Leopold Weber chatting about tabletop role-playing and specifically failure in tabletop role-playing and D&D and how that can kind of help you deal with, when things don't always go your way in real life as well. Coming up later this week, hopefully by the time you listen to this, one Alex Meehan will have reviewed Overboss, which has been mentioned a few times on previous podcasts.
It has, yeah.
Which I am looking forward to reading that review because it sounds intriguing. We'll also have Samantha Nelson running through the best kind of board games with Cthulhu in, just in time for Halloween. Yeah, we've cut it down to a short 10 because there are a lot of them, but there are plenty of good ones in amongst the not so good ones. So yeah, we've got a lot coming up on the website and on the YouTube channel. But for now, that is all the time we have for on this week's Dicebreaker podcast. Thank you for being here, Alex Meehan.
Oh, I've loved it. It's been great.
Thank you for being here, Wills.
Thank you very much, Matt, for having me on. And thank you to Danny DeVito for hanging down.
Yeah. This is the third week in a row that Danny DeVito has been
He's
featured.
the new mascot.
The new mascot of
Not
Dicebreaker.
in that form.
In only that format. The only one that matches the tone.
I've been Matt Jarvis, here with you, suffering through it with you, the listeners. Thank you for listening. We will be back next Friday, of course, with another episode of the Dicebreaker podcast. Until then, thanks for listening. Stay safe out there. And have a lovely day. Bye.